By now, we're all pretty familiar with Oppo, the Chinese manufacturer that made a splash last year by offering the first great 1080p display experience with the Find 5, and then by making us turn our heads for the rotating camera of the N1. But now they are looking to be ahead of the curve again with the phone that sports a Quad HD display. But we don't have that version of the phone. Not yet. As the wait continues, we can at least look at its more conventional offering that sports a 1080p display instead, but still has a lot to offer. Hey, it's Josh Vergara from Android Authority, and this is the Oppo Find 7a. Yes, you heard right, this is the Oppo Find 7a, the version of Oppo's new flagship that does not sport the 2K or Quad HD display. But in just about every other aspect, this is pretty much the same device. When it comes to the design, you get an aesthetic that is actually very similar to the Oppo Find 5 that came before it, except this time around it has been blown up to a 5.5-inch display. Capacitive keys line the lower portion of the front, while the very nice Skyline LED notification light adorns the very bottom. Around the sides, the button layout consists of a mirrored setup that I'm generally used to, with the power button being on the left and the volume rockers found on the right. And while they are really squishy to the touch, I didn't have any problem with their responsiveness, thankfully. Once you make it around the back, you'll find that the cover is actually removable, and it gives you access to the removable battery and the micro SD and SIM trays. These covers can be replaced, though the version that we were hoping to use, the carbon fiber backing, is only available on the premium version of the Find 7. Overall, Oppo continues to put the good looks into their devices, and the Find 7a is definitely in line with all of the good build quality that we've come to expect from Oppo, as there is a bit of a heft to this phone and it is felt all throughout. Handling is primarily predicated by the larger screen size. At 5.5 inches, this is not the kind of screen you'll be able to maneuver around easily in one hand. Flat sides allow for a pretty good grip, but otherwise you'll be performing plenty of hand gymnastics to at least reach the top of the display. Ultimately, we have a phone here that does toe the line between aesthetic and function, especially considering that back cover is removable, and then you have some extra freedom given the features that are available underneath that hood. Coming in at 5.5 inches, the screen on the Oppo Find 7a is more conventional in the sense that it is a 1080p display and not the Quad HD one found in the premium edition. But don't let that dissuade you from looking at this device as a viable option. When we did get our first hands-on with the two versions of the Oppo Find 7, we initially concluded that the general user won't really notice that bump up or down in resolution depending on the version you end up getting. So, standing alone, this IPS display brings great colors and brightness to the aptly named Color OS, which does shine through the screen quite well. Pretty much any task you throw at this vibrant display will look and perform greatly, from text to gaming. And all in all, there are no complaints with this display, and it is even enhanced by the ability to register a myriad of gestures, which we'll get into a little bit later. And as has been the trend of Oppo devices, the Find 7 comes with the best processing package readily available. The Snapdragon 801 clocked in at 2.3 GHz, backed by the Adreno 330 and 2 GB of RAM. So many flagship devices these days come with this very package, so the performance aspect should yield no surprises. You get the speed you probably come to expect in pretty much any task available. Multitasking doesn't bog down the system by any means, as going in and out of different applications is easy using the recent app screen. And using Chrome, in this case for web browsing, works a treat, as all websites loaded snappily and without any issues. So you can rest assured that even if this is not considered the premium version of Oppo's flagship, it still packs the same amount of punch underneath the hood. And it is in the hardware department that the Oppo Find 7a can actually pull away from many flagship devices it is put up against, with a couple of aces that do well to differentiate it. The first hardware aspect that is pretty easy to see off the bat is the Skyline notification light that is nestled at the bottom curve of the phone's face. It is a light that permeates through its curved line, and it just looks really slick. Now, while the light does tell you if there are notifications, and actually does tell you if the device is indeed charging, the only real gripe with it is that it only shines blue. If we were able to maybe customize the color of the LED, that would have really put it over the top. All connectivity was touted to be available here, from Bluetooth to NFC, but there was a problem with the mobile network connections that has been pretty well documented by now. Anyone looking for LTE connectivity on the T-Mobile network might have some trouble, as I did, because I just couldn't get this phone to work on the LTE 4G network of T-Mobile. I did finally manage to get LTE on a US network using AT&T, but it required me to do some sleuthing with customer support to provide the IMEI number and some extra information. In the end, it was a bit of a pain to finally get the full mobile network experience on my version of the Oppo Find 7a. So for a lot of people out there, that may not have been the case. I'm just letting you know that if you're going to get this phone, you should be wary that that might happen. Call quality yielded no problems, however, as the call sounded crisp and clear on either side. And I would put the loudspeaker in the above average category, as while it might not be the loudest that I've ever used, the sound did have a noticeable fullness to it, and it provided a more than decent experience. Onboard storage on this device came in at 16GB, but is bolstered by the inclusion of a micro SD card slot that is found underneath that removable cover. And finally, in battery, we have to talk about that VOOC fast charger. I already did a feature-focused video on it, basically outlining how it simply works wonders and has become a great asset to have. Essentially, a 4.5 amp charger is outfitted with a little extra tech, along with 2 extra pins in the actual micro USB connector to provide a charging time of 0 to 100 in about an hour. No matter how you slice it, that's an incredible feature to have, and has definitely saved many mornings, often when I forget to plug in the night before. Unfortunately, there is a bit of a trade-off because the 2800 mAh battery unit found in the Oppo Find 7a actually does get sucked up pretty easily, and on plenty instances I did find myself scared of running out of juice before the end of my day. So in that sense, it is nice to have the VOOC fast charger to save you in those particular situations, but if you really want to maximize your power consumption, your power experience, then it might be a good idea to carry a spare, which is a nice feature to have on this, the Oppo Find 7a. The camera of the Oppo Find 7a is powered by Sony Exmor and brings 13 megapixels to the party. As we start off with the app, however, we find quite a few different features available for some fun smartphone photography. Slow shutter capture that was originally introduced in the Oppo N1 allows you to do some light magic with a properly structured scene. Shooting in RAW format is available, and while that was an exciting prospect, I unfortunately found it more or less unusable because the amount of time needed to process the file after snapping was simply way too long to make it a viable tool. HDR scene modes and of course the Ultra HD 50 megapixel shooting modes are thus available after that. The 50 megapixel shots do require some extra processing time too, but the resulting images are actually quite good. They are just below the sharpness level of normal shots, but that's actually kind of okay because I believe the takeaway is that if you wanted to use the software built pictures, you actually don't lose that much fidelity at all in the final products. After that, the general picture quality of the rear camera yielded good photos. Not oversaturated by any means, but also not dull, with sharpness levels definitely where they should be in proper situations. It's not hard to get a good shot out of this camera. Video capture did bring about some nice 4K clips in my testing, so the only real disappointment in my testing was the quality of the video shot by the front-facing camera. And finally, in software, the experience on the Oppo Find 7a is handled by ColorOS, an interface that has pretty distinct character, but also nice functionality. What might strike you first is the ethereal look, as I've been describing it, that the home screens tend to take on, with its overtly earth tones, but otherwise you still get the typical slew of icons and widgets to be able to customize it the way you want. Scroll all the way to the right and you'll find media pages that either give you an easy way of using your camera or controlling your local music. Quite a bit of customization can be had here, even with the ability to set a weather effect based upon the current conditions in your area. All of this can be further catered to your liking with the pretty powerful theme engine, which can drastically change the look of your experience even to one more stock-like in color and icon set. Now get further beneath the surface and you'll get a pretty standard fare with the app drawer, which once wasn't a part of the ColorOS lexicon, and the settings menu that is pretty easy to navigate. The only gripes here include the quick settings, which you can pull down in the notification dropdown. But the thing is, the pull down eliminates the ability to see expanded versions of your notifications, which is something I tend to always use, so this was rather annoying. After that, the other issues are mainly in the translations, which is a common trope of Asian operating systems. Sometimes the description that you see there doesn't really easily tell you what the underlying setting is. What ColorOS does greatly deal with is gestures. You can swipe down from the left of the notification bar and you'll get a canvas to draw any number of programmable traces to do a myriad of tasks. I find this area pretty useful, but the gestures I far use more often are the ones drawn on a turned off screen. For example, draw a circle to easily get to the camera, or do the all too familiar double tap to simply turn the screen on. Now, ColorOS is definitely unique, but it is also definitely workable. And I do realize that for some people out there, it might not necessarily be your cup of tea. But thankfully, Oppo devices tend to come with built-in recovery, so you can always put on a custom ROM, or if you want to keep it simple, you can always just install a custom launcher to change the experience to what you want. At $499, the Oppo Find 7a is not as steep as the mainstream flagship devices we already have, but it is still somewhat steep nonetheless. When put up against the likes of the Samsung Galaxy S5 and the HTC One M8, for example, Oppo's main claim to fame is a reliable fast charging solution that, in my opinion, does make that high price pill easier to swallow. And of course, the main device that is uttered in the same breath as Oppo is the OnePlus One, a phone that comes in at $299 but has a fixed battery, fixed storage, and does not come with the VOOC charger. All features that I actually do believe justify the extra $200 if you really need those features. And so, there you have it, the Oppo Find 7a. The A in this phone's name might act like something of an asterisk, the part of the Oppo Find 7 experience that is more of a footnote compared to the premium Quad HD flagship, but that certainly isn't the case when the one we can readily have right now is the 7a. And to its point, this phone is capable of standing up to the more widely known flagship devices, especially when considered at $200 less unlocked on average. Oppo made a splash with the Find 5, outfitting it with one of the first 1080p displays of the time, and with the Find 7 it has done so again with the first Quad HD screen. But with the Find 7a, we can argue that they have found a way to alleviate the common power issue by providing a fast charging solution. So if you look at it that way, the Oppo Find 7a has that as its ace up its sleeve. Oppo continues to push the envelope, which should be appreciated because generally the features that they introduce in each new iteration, they actually tend to land pretty well. So what you get in the Oppo Find 7a is an alternative, yet again, to the Galaxies, the Ones, the Xperias out there that definitely deserves more attention. So as always, thank you guys very much for watching, and I hope you enjoyed this review of the Oppo Find 7a. We're still waiting on the Quad HD version, the premium version that also has that carbon fiber backing we really liked. But until that comes, we still have this version of the Oppo Find 7 that is still a viable alternative to all of the flagships that are currently out today. So you can go check it out, and also you can check out all of our coverage of the Oppo Find 7a and future flagships, and also don't forget to check out all the content from my colleagues in Android, Joe, Jace, Kevin the Tech Ninja, and of course Lon. Hit up that like button, hit up that subscribe button, and then hit up AndroidAuthority.com because we are, of course, your source for all things Android.